Motorola Razr HD review. The Motorola Razr HD launched in the US late last year, but in that time all that's changed is the name. It was called the Motorola Droid Razr HD in the US. So it's less of a mouthful now. Unfortunately, the specs haven't changed, leaving it with just a dual-core 1.5 GHz processor and 1 GB of RAM. Rounding out the specs, the phone's running Android 4.1 to Jelly Bean. There's a 4.7-inch 720x1280 display, 16 GB of internal storage which can be expanded with a microSD card of up to 32 GB, and an 8MP camera capable of shooting 1080p video at 30 FPS. Buying Guide 20 Best Mobile Phones in the World. Today, while those specs would be fine on a mid-range phone, for a flagship handset they were looking a little low-end even last year. And now, next to the Sony Xperia Z and Samsung Galaxy S4, they seem positively quaint. Being a flagship handset, it's not unreasonable to consider these phones its competitors. Despite them rocking at least quad-core processors and 2 GB of RAM, of course specs aren't everything, and they don't always equate to real-world performance anyway. But it's still a little disappointing. On the other hand, the price is a little lower than some top-end handsets, coming in at around £400 Australian prices TBC. Some free. Cheaper than an iPhone 5, a Sony Xperia Z. It's priced at around the same level as the high-end but last year's Samsung Galaxy S3, but even that substantially outperforms it on paper. Ditto the Google Nexus 4, which can be picked up from Google itself for just £239, $349 upwards. Best Android phone. One thing that we will say is that the Motorola Razr HD certainly looks the part, with a rugged yet premium-looking Kevlar backplate. It comes across as both expensive and built to last. It's also a nice change from the plastic found on most phones, or even the glass, a shiny metal that a handful sport. The corners are also a bit different, being less rounded than most of the competition, giving it a striking, almost jagged look. The front of the phone doesn't disappoint either. Sure, it's basically just a sheet of glass, but it's edge to edge, leaving it looking pretty slick. At 146 grams, it's got a pleasing amount of weight to it, which feels particularly appropriate given the slightly rugged design. Size-wise, it's about what you'd expect for a top-end phone, with a 4.7-inch display and total dimensions of 131.9 x 67.98.4 millimeters. If anything, it's actually quite a slim handset, though still somewhat thicker than the incredibly slender 7.9mm deep Sony Xperia Z. Best phone. Save up to 40% on your mobile phone contract. While it doesn't feel bad in the hand, it doesn't feel great either. The Motorola Razr HD's Kevlar back has quite a pleasant feel, but it's also quite slippery, making it slightly harder to get a solid grip on than many other phones. The corners also present a slight problem. Since being more jagged than most, they can be a little uncomfortable, potentially digging into your hand slightly when the handset is held in certain positions. Pretty much the only thing on the front of the phone is the 4.7-inch 720x1280 screen with a 312p pixel density. That's quite sharp, just topping the 306p Samsung Galaxy S3 and almost matching the 318p Google Nexus 4. They're not even coming close to the 441p Sony Xperia Z or 468p HTC One. The only other things on the front of the phone are small black strips at the top and bottom, The bottom strip is devoid of any features, while the top strip has the earpiece in the center, with an indicator light above it, which flashes when an email, text or voicemail comes through. There is a small Motorola logo at the very top, and the 1.3 MP front-facing camera lens just to the right of it. The Kevlar back is adorned with an arrow-like pattern, with an M in the center. The main 8MP camera, which can also shoot 1080p video at 30 fps, is at the top, while to the left of it there's the flash and to the right there's a speaker. The edges of the Motorola Razr HD have a brushed metal look to them, with the top edge housing a 3.5mm headphone port on the right. What is NFC and why is it in your phone? The right edge is home to the only two buttons on the phone, a power button near the top, which is also used to make the handset sleep, wake up, and a volume rocker halfway down. The positioning of the buttons is fairly standard and works well. Usefully, they also feel different, since the power button has little ridges running along it, while the volume rocker is mostly smooth but juts out a little at each end. This makes it easy to differentiate the buttons by touch alone. The left-hand side has a micro HDMI port at the bottom, for connecting the handset to a TV or monitor, a micro USB port above it, and a little compartment halfway up, which houses the micro SIM card and a micro SD card. The backplate can't be removed, so there's no option to swap the battery. However, it comes with a 2530 mAh battery, which is pretty big for a phone of this size. It promises impressive performance too, with Motorola claiming it can manage up to 24 hours of talk time or 286 hours of standby time. If the battery lives up to its potential, it could be the saving grace in an otherwise slightly underwhelming handset. Thanks for watching. Subscribe this channel for future updates.